All right, so we're back for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at the 2025 Formula One season.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at it right from the preseason starting grid.
Yeah, absolutely. Like right out of the gate, you know?
Yeah. So to help us do that, we've got a really cool piece of source material here. It's a script from another podcast that's been previewing this season.
Cool.
So for you listening, I guess the mission today is to really get a grasp on the big stories going into the season, the driver changes, the preseason buzz, all of that. And, F1, for those of you who are maybe new listeners to the show, it's a 24-race season.
It's a marathon, yeah.
Yeah, starting in Australia.
Yeah, should be good.
So really the big question that we're trying to answer today is, with the 2025 F1 season about to begin, what are the most significant changes, and what are the expectations surrounding those changes? And then how might those changes impact the battles for the championship?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the preview podcast that we've got here jumps right in.
Yeah.
It says the undisputed headline of the year is Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's the biggest story of the off season for sure. After more than a decade with Mercedes, just incredible success.
Unbelievable.
Breaking all the records.
Yeah.
Hamilton's now wearing, the famous red of Ferrari.
Yeah, that's iconic.
This is a move that people have talked about for years and years, and now it's finally happened.
Right. And so I guess the question is, can Hamilton, he's getting up there in age.
Right.
Can he bring Ferrari back to its, championship winning ways?
That's a good question. I mean, and this kind of leads into one of the things that the podcast highlights as a big question mark, which is Ferrari's strategy.
Oh, yeah.
They've often had a very, very fast car, but they've also made some pretty questionable decisions during races.
Yep.
Tifosis have been let down many times by those decisions. So can Hamilton, with all of his experience, can he kind of be the solution to those issues?
Yeah, and I think one thing about that is, can his feedback on the car lead to maybe better strategy decisions based on how he feels the car's performing?
Right, exactly, because he's going to have so much more information than maybe they've had in the past.
Right, and this preview podcast that we're looking at even goes so far as to say that, Ferrari's strategy team and questionable decisions are practically a legendary pairing.
Oof. Yeah.
So, it kind of makes you wonder if even a 7-time world champion can fix that.
It's ingrained in the culture over there.
But now on top of all that, they've also got Charles Leclerc as Hamilton's teammate.
Right.
Which could be huge.
Yeah. I mean, Leclerc is definitely one of the fastest drivers on the grid right now.
For sure.
And the podcast even hints that we could see a rivalry similar to Hamilton and Rosberg, back when they were teammates.
Oh, man. That would be amazing.
And that was so good.
So, yeah. So how this, internal competition between these two drivers unfolds will definitely have a big impact on Ferrari's championship hopes.
Right.
The podcast even calls it, we might see some spicy internal team battles.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So you can see why people are excited about this. I mean, just imagine you've got these two incredible drivers.
Right.
They both want to win the championship.
Of course.
That's going to be a storyline all season long.
Absolutely.
So Hamilton's move, it's not just a driver change.
Yeah.
It's like this whole, complex story with Ferrari's history and the strategy issues, and now this potential rivalry with Leclerc.
Yeah, and it just adds to this overall feeling that this season is going to be really unpredictable.
Totally. So we've talked about Hamilton and Ferrari. Now this podcast moves on to Max Verstappen, the 4-time world champion.
Yeah.
Huge accomplishment.
It's crazy.
But this preview podcast that we're looking at says that he might face some different kinds of pressure this year.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I mean, I think one of the things they're pointing to is that last year, while Verstappen dominated the Drivers' Championship, Red Bull didn't win the Constructors' title.
Oh, that's right.
So maybe that's a sign that their dominance isn't quite as strong as it used to be. Maybe other teams are catching up.
Yeah. And then on top of that, you've got Adrian Newey leaving Red Bull to join Aston Martin.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge deal.
This preview podcast calls that a huge deal.
Yeah.
And for you listening, Newey is considered like an aerodynamic genius.
Right. He's the best.
His designs have been a big part of Red Bull's success.
Yeah, he understands how air moves around the car like nobody else.
Right. So him leaving Red Bull, that raises a big question mark about whether they can keep that performance advantage that they've had.
Can they stay ahead of the curve?
Right. Are Mercedes or McLaren going to catch up because of this?
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah. And then to make things even more interesting, Verstappen has a new teammate this year, Liam Lawson.
Right. replacing Perez.
Stepping in for Sergio Perez. And Lawson is a talented young driver.
Yeah, he's got potential.
But what this preview podcast is suggesting is that this puts even more pressure on Verstappen.
Right.
To get those good results.
Yeah, he's going to have to carry the team a bit more.
Right, because he might not have a teammate who's consistently getting those points and taking points away from rivals.
Right.
So the question becomes, can Verstappen, keep winning championships if the Red Bull isn't the fastest car every single race?
Right. Can his driving make up for any deficiencies in the car?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not just about Verstappen continuing his dominance.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's about him dealing with a maybe less dominant car.
Mm-hmm.
Losing that key technical figure in Newby and having more pressure on him as the team leader.
Right. It's a whole different ballgame.
It really seems like this podcast is saying this quest for a 5th title could be as tough as yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the days of Red Bull just cruising to the championship, those might be over.
Right.
At least for now.
Yep.
It's going to be a lot closer this year, I think.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so speaking of exciting teams, this preview podcast we're looking at turns its attention to McLaren.
Oh, yeah.
They finished last season incredibly strong.
They did. They really turned it on in the second half.
Yeah, it was a statement.
Absolutely.
And the podcast really highlights their driver pairing, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri.
Yeah.
They call them the ultimate duo.
Wow.
Lethal on track.
High praise.
Pretty strong words.
For sure.
What do you think makes them so effective?
Well, I think it's the mix of experience and youth that they have. Norris has been with the team for a while now.
Yeah, he's a veteran.
He's become a consistent front runner. And then you have Piastri, who's incredibly talented and has shown he can adapt and be really quick.
Yeah.
And the podcast points out that they finished last season really strong, and then the winter testing data was also really positive.
Oh, wow. So they're carrying that momentum.
Yeah, it seems like it.
That's impressive. And the podcast even asks the listener a question. They say, who's a better bet for a championship? Norris or Piastri?
That's tough.
And they acknowledge that Norris has the experience.
Yeah.
But Piastri has that raw talent and just that hunger.
Right.
What a question for F1 fans to think about.
I mean, it's a great debate to have right now.
Yeah.
Norris has been close to winning for a while now.
Yeah.
He can definitely fight at the front. And then Piastri, he's had these moments of brilliance that make you think he could be a future champion.
Wow.
So it'll be interesting to see how McLaren manages that internal competition as well.
Right. Are they going to let them race each other freely?
Yeah.
Or are they going to, favor one if he becomes a clear contender?
That's always a tough decision for a team to make.
Yeah. And the ultimate goal for McLaren, according to the podcast, is to win their first driver's title since 2008 with Lewis Hamilton.
Wow. Has it really been that long?
That's a long drought for a team with their history.
Yeah, they're a storied team.
The fact that they're even being talked about as contenders again is huge.
It really shows how far they've come.
Yeah, so we could have a 3-way battle this year.
Potentially Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren.
Oh, man.
That's what the fans want to see.
That's what we want to see. Okay, so now the podcast shifts gears and starts talking about the rookies.
Oh, the young guns.
The new drivers coming into F1.
Yeah.
And they say there's a stacked rookie class this year. 6 drivers.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's a big influx of new talent.
Yeah. It's always exciting to see new blood in the sport.
Yeah. It shakes things up.
For sure. And these young guys, they're all hungry to prove themselves. And that can lead to some surprises.
The podcast highlights Andrea Kimi Antonelli replacing Hamilton at Mercedes is a big story.
Yeah.
He's only 18 years old.
Wow.
Stepping into the shoes of a legend.
Yeah, big shoes to fill.
The pressure must be immense.
It's got to be tough. I mean, Antonelli, he's obviously got the talent. He's been successful in the junior categories.
Yeah.
But jumping straight to a top team like Mercedes, that's a massive leap.
Right, and he'll be under the microscope from day one.
Right, every move he makes will be analyzed.
Can he handle that pressure? And can he deliver those consistent results?
It's the million-dollar question.
Yeah. And on top of that, how quickly can he get used to driving an F1 car?
Right, these cars are beasts.
The intensity of the race weekends.
Yeah, it's a whole different world.
It's a lot for an 18-year-old to handle.
For sure.
And it's not just Antonelli. The podcast also mentions Jack Doohan at Alpine as another rookie with a lot of potential.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Doohan. He's shown some really good speed in the junior categories.
Right.
And Alpine will be hoping he can contribute right away.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of rookies to watch
Absolutely.
as the season unfolds.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how they all stack up against each other.
Right, who adapts the fastest, who makes the fewest mistakes.
Right, those are the key things early in the season.
Yeah, and the podcast even makes a prediction about Antonelli.
Okay.
They say he might have some major highlight moments,
Okay,
but struggle with consistency,
that makes sense.
which seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, for a young driver on a top team, it's to be expected.
Right, so we could see some brilliance, but also some rookie mistakes.
Right, it's part of the learning curve.
And that's what makes it exciting.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's good for F1 to have this young talent coming in.
Yeah, keeps things fresh.
Absolutely.
So to recap what we've learned from this preview podcast,
Okay.
we've got Hamilton's huge move to Ferrari,
Right.
questions about Verstappen and Red Bull's dominance, McLaren looking really strong with Norris and Piastri,
Yeah.
and a promising rookie class led by Antonelli.
It's going to be a good season.
It seems like the 2025 season is going to be wide open.
Yeah, unpredictable.
Lots of storylines to follow.
Absolutely.
So much intrigue.
Can't wait.
Now, for you listening, we want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
Considering all these storylines, all this potential for shifts in power, what do you think will be the most decisive factor in who wins the championships this year? Will it be the driver's skill, the performance of the cars,
The cars are always key.
the strategy from the teams,
Oh, strategy can make or break a season.
or maybe some unforeseen consequences from new regulations or personnel changes?
Right, like Newey going to Aston Martin.
Right. Think about how all these things might interact and influence each other.
It's going to be fascinating to watch it all play out.
Yeah, it promises to be an exciting season, and we'll be here all year long to break it all down for you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
We'll see you next time.